I stood in my study at 6:47 a.m. on Christmas morning, looking at the mahogany cabinet that had held my collection for 32 years. The ornaments, 63 of them, caught the pale light coming through the bay window. Each one a glass globe, a wooden carving, a metal figurine. Each one bearing a name and a date written in fading ink on a small paper tag tied around its neck. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. It helps more than you think. My granddaughter, Emma, was 17. She was downstairs in the living room. I could hear her feet moving quietly across the hardwood. She didn't know I was awake. She thought the house was still sleeping. I had heard her on the phone 2 nights ago. My grandfather is rich, but he's kind of hoarding stuff. These ornaments, nobody looks at them. Some of them could go for $50, maybe $100 on eBay. I could make real money, enough for my deposit on the apartment when I moved to New York. Her mother, my daughter Catherine, had not stopped her. Catherine, who had learned from me that you could save people's lives and still lose control of your own life. Catherine, who had been silent. I should have been angry. I had 42 years of practice with anger. I had walked out of operating rooms and screamed into pillows. I had thrown charts across desks. Anger was the one thing I had learned to master, to channel, to weaponize when necessary. Instead, I felt something else. Sadness, yes. But underneath it, a strange clarity. Emma didn't know what she was touching. She saw ornaments, glass, potential money. She didn't know they were lives. I slipped on my robe and walked downstairs, moving like a ghost through my own house. Emma was bent over my china cabinet, carefully placing ornaments into a padded box. She worked with the precision of someone who had watched estate sale videos on YouTube. Each piece was wrapped in bubble wrap first. She was doing it right, at least. She wasn't dropping them. She was treating them like they had value, even if she didn't understand what that value was. "Good morning," I said quietly from the doorway. She jumped, spinning around, her face flushing from pale to crimson in a second. "Grandpa, I was just—" She gestured at the half-empty cabinet, at the box, the bubble wrap. The lie died before it was fully born. "Come sit down," I said, pointing to the couch. "Before you pack anything else?" She looked like she wanted to run. She was a runner. That was her sport, actually. Varsity track. She was fast at many things, except this, being caught. She sat, perched on the edge of the cushion like she might flee at any moment. I sat across from her, my hands folded. "How much were they worth?" I asked, not unkindly. "Maybe $3,000, she said quietly. "If I listed them carefully, found the right collectors." "And the apartment?" "Deposit. First month. I was going to help pay for the move." I nodded. I looked at her, really looked at her. She had her mother's face, but her father's eyes. She had the look of someone who wanted something more than the life she had been given and who hadn't yet learned that more isn't always better, that it often costs more than you think. "Before you sell them," I said, "I want you to know what you're selling." She looked confused. "They're ornaments?" "No," I said, "they're not." I stood up and walked over to the cabinet. I picked up the first one, a red glass ball with a name etched into the paper tag in spidery handwriting, Margaret Chen, 2001. Margaret Chen came to my emergency room on March 15th, 2001, I said, sitting back down and holding the ornament up to the light. She was 34 years old, car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was bleeding out in the passenger seat while her husband screamed. Emma watched me, her face uncertain. We almost lost her, I continued. She had internal bleeding. We got her into the OR in 14 minutes. It took me 6 hours to find all the bleeders, to patch her up, to stitch her back together. Her organs were destroyed, but her heart was strong. She wanted to live. I could feel it. I set the ornament down gently on the table between us. I always buy an ornament for patients I save on Christmas. My own ritual, my own way of keeping the score. Margaret Chin lived. She had 2 more children after that night. She's a teacher now. She teaches high school biology. I picked up another one. Robert Schultz, 2004. Robert Schultz, 68 years old, massive heart attack. His wife called 911 at 2:47 a.m. He coded in the ambulance, coded in the ER, coded twice during the angioplasty. His heart kept stopping, and I kept making it start again. Emma was looking at the ornament now, really looking at it. He made it, I said. He's still alive. He's 88. He sends me a Christmas card every year. This year's card is on the mantel in the dining room. He wrote that he's been dancing with his wife again. After the heart attack, he thought he'd never dance again. I picked up a third one, this one wooden, carved into the shape of a little girl. Sophie Williams, 2008. Sophie Williams, I said slowly. She was 4 years old. I paused here. Emma shifted uncomfortably. She had leukemia, I said. I wasn't her primary oncologist. I was her emergency physician. But when her parents brought her in at 3 a.m. with a fever and a low white blood cell count, I was the one who admitted her. I was the one who held the IV still in her tiny arm while the nurse found a vein. I looked at Emma. Sophie died anyway, I said. 6 months later, even with the best care in the world. But she lived 6 months longer than she would have without that IV, without that hospital stay. Her mother told me that Sophie got to go to the beach one more time. She got to teach her little brother how to make a sandcastle. She got to see her 5th birthday party. I set the wooden ornament down. I buy ornaments for the ones who die too, I said. I put them in the cabinet anyway. Because those lives mattered. Because those deaths mattered. Because I will never forget the moment I had to turn off the ventilator and let Sophie's parents say goodbye. Emma was crying silently now, tears running down her face. I have 63 ornaments, I said. 52 of them are lives I saved. 11 of them are lives I couldn't save. Every single one is a person who came to me when they were breaking. Every single one is a moment when I had to decide if I was going to let them go or fight for them. I reached across and took her hand. I don't expect you to understand this yet, I said. You're 17. You're supposed to want to leave this house, to make your own way. You're supposed to think your life begins when you move to New York. And maybe it does. But before you go, I want you to know what you're walking away from. Not the cabinet, not the house, the weight. Emma didn't try to sell the ornaments. Instead, she did something I didn't expect. She asked to see the card from Robert Schultz. She read it 3 times. Then she asked me about Margaret Chin. Not the statistics, not the medicine, the person. What did she like to teach? Did she have a favorite subject? What did her handwriting look like? We sat for hours, me telling her the stories, pulling down ornaments one by one. The woman who survived a blood clot and went on to run a marathon. The man who beat pancreatic cancer and spent the last 5 years volunteering at the homeless shelter, the child who made it to age 16 before the leukemia came back, the teenager who survived a suicide attempt and became a suicide prevention counselor, and the ones who didn't make it, the middle-aged woman with 3 kids who had a massive stroke, the elderly man whose body simply gave out after 83 years of living, the baby who was born too early and whose lungs couldn't learn to breathe on their own. Emma listened. Sometimes she asked questions. Mostly, she just listened. Around noon, Catherine came downstairs. She saw the empty box, the ornaments back in the cabinet. She saw Emma crying, and her hand went to her mouth. "I was going to tell you," Emma said quickly, seeing her mother's expression. "But Grandpa, he explained, and I couldn't." Catherine looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Gratitude, maybe, or relief, or just the recognition that her daughter was understanding something that had taken Catherine 30 years to learn. "I'm sorry," Emma said to me. "I was selfish." I shook my head. "You were 17. You were supposed to be selfish, but now you know better. That's the only thing any of us can do, know better when we see the truth." On New Year's Eve, Emma came back to the house, not to steal, to listen. She asked if she could help me organize the ornaments, to write down the full stories, to create a document she could keep, a record. "When I'm in New York," she said, "I want to remember. I want to tell people these stories, not for money, just because they matter." I realized then that I had given her something more valuable than money. I had given her context. I had given her weight. I had shown her that her life was not separate from other lives, that her choices rippled outward, that the things we touch are often heavier than they appear. 3 weeks later, Catherine called me. She was crying, real body-shaking tears, not the polite kind. "He's leaving," she said. "Emma's father, he got a job in San Francisco. He wants to move out there. He wants Emma to stay with him for the summer." I waited. This wasn't about the ornaments. This was about something deeper. "I called him," Catherine continued, "to tell him no. To tell him Emma had a summer job here, that she had her running team, that it wasn't his right to just take her away. And he asked me what I had to offer her. What could she do here that she couldn't do in San Francisco? And I didn't have an answer. I sat with that. Then, Catherine said, Emma walked into the room and heard me struggling, and she said, "Dad, I want to stay because I'm learning something. Grandpa is teaching me to remember. I don't want to forget." Catherine's voice broke. "When did she become so wise?" she whispered. "She always was," I said. "She just needed to know why it mattered." If you're struggling to connect with your own children or grandchildren, if you feel like they're choosing the world over you, take a moment to share your stories. Not lectures, stories. Tell them what you lived through. Tell them why the things you've kept matter. Your presence isn't a burden. It's a gift. For more on building intergenerational bonds and legacy, check out Grandkids Matter or the Legacy Project on YouTube. Christmas came around again. A year had passed since Emma tried to sell the ornaments. This time, she helped me decorate the tree. We hung each ornament carefully, and she told me which stories to tell. Not all of them. That would take all night. But the ones that had stuck with her, Margaret Chen, the teacher, Robert Schultz, the dancer, Sophie Williams, the little girl who went to the beach. There was a new ornament, too. I had bought it that week. Emma Sullivan, 2024. "For me?" Emma asked, confused. But I didn't survive anything. I didn't have a medical emergency. No, I said, you survived something better. You survived the temptation to sell your legacy for money. You chose to stay. You chose to learn. You chose to remember. She held it up to the light, and I watched her see herself in it, not as a broken person needing fixing, but as someone strong enough to turn around, to listen, to understand that some things can't be measured in dollars. Catherine stood in the doorway, watching us. I could see the same understanding dawning on her face. She had spent 40 years trying to outrun her father's shadow, trying to prove she was her own person. And now she was realizing that she never had to outrun it. She just had to stop and face it. "Dad," she said quietly, "I think I'd like to hear some of your stories." And that was the moment I felt it, not weight, but lightness. The weight had been lifted, translated from burden to meaning. The ornaments weren't just mine anymore. They belonged to all of us. As we hung the last few ornaments, I thought about what Emma had said to her father. "I'm learning something. Grandpa is teaching me to remember. I don't want to forget." That's what we're all trying to do, really. To be remembered, to know that our lives mattered, that the people we saved, the people we loved, the people we lost, that they're still here, hanging on a tree, glowing in the light of a winter morning. Emma would leave for New York in September. She would make her own life, her own money, her own mistakes. That's what children do. But now, she would carry these stories with her. She would tell people about Margaret Chen and Robert Schultz. She would remember Sophie Williams, and she would know why remembering mattered. And when she had children of her own, she would hang these ornaments on their tree. She would tell them the stories, and the weight would transform again, not into a burden, but into a bridge between past and future, a bridge made of lives held together by the simple human act of refusing to forget. Thank you for listening to this story of memory, inheritance, and love. If you believe in the power of legacy and the importance of telling your stories before it's too late, please subscribe and like. Share this with someone you love, because the greatest gift you can give is not money or things. It's your presence, your stories, and your willingness to let the next generation know why they matter. See you next time.